You're most welcome, viewers. This is Teacher Isaac for Sciences again. In this episode, we are going to look at the interdependence of things in the environment. There are two words that you have to understand here, that is interdependence and then environment, okay? So let's first of all go through the vocabulary that you're supposed to use in here. First is the interdependence. We need to understand what interdependence means. So when do we use this? Interdependence simply means the way organisms depend on each other or benefit from each other. Okay? You get something from something. Something gets something from you. Something like that. So that is interdependence, working together as in benefiting from each other. So the way organisms, in this case we are talking of organisms, those are plants, animals, and maybe non-living things, depend on each other, okay? Then the environment, this simply means the surrounding, okay? The things that surround people, we may not say man, things surrounding people, all the things that are around you, that is the environment, okay? Then we shall look at the food chain. The food chain is that still the interdependence, how organisms get food in the environment. It's the relationship that shows how animals get food in the environment, okay? You remember that in the food chain, we have what we call the producers, then we have consumers. Consumers are grouped into primary consumers, secondary consumers, then tertiary consumers. So it begins with plants because they are the producers. It is where food originates from. Just imagine if we didn't have plants, life would not be the same. I mean, we could not get food. Plants manufacture their own food, and in that case they are called autotrophs. That word simply means organisms which have the capacity of making their own food. And those are only plants, nothing else. So plants are capable of making their own food, and so they are producers because they are the beginning of the food chain. It's where the food chain starts from. Now, if plants were not there, those organisms that feed on plants would not exist, especially the herbivores. Herbivores feed on plants, entirely depend on plants. Those are the herbivores, okay? Now, we have also the carnivores in the food chain. The carnivorous animals are those which entirely depend on flesh. Sometimes we call it meat, but it's flesh, okay? So those animals which eat that flesh are called carnivores. So carnivorous animals entirely depend on flesh. Then herbivores depend on plants. They entirely depend on vegetation. Now, if the plants are not there, herbivores can't be there, and so the carnivores, because carnivores feed on herbivores, and herbivores feed on plants. Now, the plants are not there. That means herbivores won't feed because they will not maybe substitute their food to start eating meat. They cannot. So that is one problem we would have if we didn't have the plants in the food chain. So from producers, we move to the primary consumers. The primary consumers are those which feed directly on plants, okay? Then we shall come to secondary consumers. Those ones which feed on primary consumers are the secondary consumers. Then the tertiary are the decomposers like bacteria. They help to break down food. They help in rotting, okay, decomposition. That's why they're called decomposers. Those are the bacteria. They help in that. All right, we have another word here. That is agroforestry. So agroforestry has two words, that's agriculture and the forestry. It simply means we do agriculture alongside growing of trees. So in other words, agroforestry is normally seen by many farmers practicing it because it is so advantageous. They get double income. They can get income from growing crops. They also get income from selling the trees. Okay? So where crops are grown alongside trees or planting trees is what we call agroforestry. All right. So this is what we have to do today. We shall start with the components of the environment. Components of the environment. We shall begin by defining what that component is. What is meant by that word component? Components are the components are the things that make up something. So in this case, things that make up the environment are what we call components. Now the components are grouped into two categories, form the components of the environment. We have the living things and then the non-living things. Now the components, all things that are around you, all the things that are around you are either living things or non-living things. So those are the components of the environment. You need to know what living things are. Way back in P1, you said that these are the things that have life. Things that have life are what we call living things. Then things which don't have life are what we call non-living things. Now, when it comes to things that have life, they include people like you, they include plants, because they have life. They grow. Remember the characteristics that we gave. They grow, they can feed, they respire, they respond to stimulus, they excrete. All those are examples of characteristics of such living things. Now, whatever does such things qualifies to be a living thing. Okay? So plants do that, you do that, animals do that, birds in the air do that, and so on. Now when it comes to living and non-living things, those which do not have life, okay? Those are the components which do not have life. Where you're seated, you're using a computer, you might be using a desktop or laptop, anything, or a phone. That one is a living thing. It does not have life, though it responds when you tell it to do something, it responds. But it's not a living thing, it's a non-living thing. Where you're seated on a non-living thing. That's a chair. If you're standing on a floor, which is a non-living thing. You're in a house, which is a non-living thing. All those things that are around you and do not have life are called non-living things. So those are the components. So non-living things, major components, we look at water, the water you normally take, the water you use for cooking, the water you use for washing. That's the water I'm talking about. That's a non-living thing. Now, we have air. The air you breathe in, then you breathe out. Okay? Even the one that blows, that is wind, air in motion, that one is non-living thing. Then we have the soil, stones. Soil has components, remember? There are stones there, rock particles. All those are non-living things. All right, let's look at how now they depend on each other. We shall start with plants. How plants depend on animals in the environment. Of course, there are many things that plants get from animals. Okay, we shall begin by the air we breathe out, that is carbon dioxide. Way back, you talked of the process by which plants make their own food, and that is photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis has raw materials, and there are two, that is water and carbon dioxide. Now, plants are also pollinated. Okay? Plants are pollinated. Remember, pollination is carried out by agents. Agents are those which help pollination to take place, the things that help pollination to take place. In this case, people can be agents of pollination, Animals, other animals like birds, we shall consider birds, even if dogs, anything, they can help pollination to take place. So how do plants benefit from that? They are pollinated. In other words, pollen grains are transferred from the anther heads to the stigma. Okay? So that transfer is helped by some of these agents, and they include insects like bees. Remember bees? There are some birds like the hummingbird, which sucks nectar from flowers. It helps also in pollination. So plants are pollinated. And lastly, they also get care. They get care. You normally water these plants. You go and carry out weeding in the garden. You're caring for them. When you go and prune, you're caring for them. When you go and maybe thin, you're caring for them. Okay? So that is how plants are cared for, and that care is brought about by animals. So we have seen plants get carbon dioxide from animals, they get manure from animals, they also get care from animals. Now, the last one is plants are dispersed by animals. I'll take you back to P6, dispersion. When does it take place? When does it happen? Okay? So when seeds are scattered from the mother plant over a wide area, that qualifies to be dispersion. So seed dispersion is done by sometimes animals. When you go to maybe your village, you pick a mango from there, bring it to town. After eating the mango, definitely you throw away the seed. Now that seed can get chance and germinates. When it germinates, it will form a tree, which tree may be originated from your village. Then birds eat seeds, some of them just swallow them. Now when they go and make poop somewhere, they release these seeds in their feces or their droppings, and then these seeds may happen to germinate. When they germinate, of course, a new plant develops, and by so doing, the plant has been dispersed from one village to another village by either the bird or you, the animals. Okay? So that is how plants depend on animals. Let's look at how animals depend on plants. How do animals depend on plants? First of all, the major thing is food. We get food from plants. I told you that plants have the capacity of making their own food, and the process is photosynthesis. Now, what type of food is made by plants during photosynthesis? You already say that is starch. So we get starch from these plants, because without them, even people are vegetarians. There are some people are vegetarians. They entirely depend on plants. They don't eat meat. They don't eat flesh. So basically, they depend entirely on plants. So plants provide food to us, and they also provide food to animals that we eat, like the cows. When you slaughter it, remember you get beef. But that cow depends on plants. Okay? So other animals, besides people, depend on plants for food. Now, we also get oxygen from plants. Remember, during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is needed, but oxygen is given off, and it is what we enjoy. So we give plants carbon dioxide. In exchange, plants give us oxygen, which we use for respiration. Remember, respiration is when food is burnt with oxygen to release energy, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. Okay, that is respiration. It's different from breathing. But even breathing, that is gaseous exchange, we take in oxygen. Okay? Now, some plants provide shelter to animals. Yes, when it is a sunny day, very hot, you would want to go under a shade. And that shade is of a tree maybe, because it is always cold. It feels cold. You feel like, yeah, this is a nice place to live in. Now, it is all about plants. If the plant is not there, then you may not be able to sit under a tree shade. Now, shelter also to birds. Birds make their nests on trees. They don't come on walls, they don't come on the ground, they make their nests on trees. So that means, yes, trees provide shelter to animals, not only to people, but also other animals. You always see other animals lying under the shade of a tree, okay? Because they want maybe fresh air, okay? They are tired of the sunbathing, so they come under the shade and relax, okay? So it is a habitat to some animals and also shelter to some animals. Those are the plants, okay? Now, animals get, they are used as, the plants are used as building materials. You know, when we are constructing houses, even if it's a bungalow or any type, you can't do it without these plants because you use timber. Remember, timber can be used to make the ladders. It can also be used to make sticks for holding maybe the ceiling. Also roofing. It is the same thing we use, and that is all about plants, okay? Then we also get wood fuel, because it is an energy that is used mostly in villages. They use wood fuel, even in town, because charcoal comes from plants, and charcoal is wood fuel. So that one is also one of the things that we get from plants. Then, how else do animals depend on plants? Yes, they provide herbal medicine. Plants, plant leaves. If plant leaves are eaten, they can be a remedy for some diseases. Okay, like cough, they tell you go and get mango leaves, crush them or boil them. You can also use the bark of a tree. You chop it slightly, then you mix up with the leaves, and then you make what you call herbal medicine. So that one can be curative. It can cure some diseases. I told you, like cough, even some skin diseases. The Vaseline you normally use, it is mixed up with some of the plant materials. Okay? So basically, that is how animals depend on plants. Now, if we look at how animals depend on other animals, it is where we're going. An animal depending on another animal. Where can we see that? Animals depend on other animals. One, for food. A lion can eat a goat. A lion can eat a gazelle, an antelope, or a cheetah can eat any of those. Wildebeests, they can eat them. So, in other words, animals provide food to other animals. We people, we also slaughter them. We slaughter rabbits, we slaughter goats, we slaughter the other animals. We are eating them. So they are providing flesh to us. We eat them. So animals provide food to other animals. I've told you an example of a lion eating it. Even human beings, lions can eat human beings. So that is for food. Now let's look at animals being parasites. We have that relationship or the feeding mechanism, which is called a parasitic mode of feeding or mode of nutrition, where an organism depends on another organism for food, but without necessarily killing them. Okay? So way back we used to have lice in our hair. I don't know whether it still exists. Such people are still there. God forbid anyway. But nowadays I don't see it happen. We used to have lice. Now lice could really suck your blood. We have other animals like mosquitoes. They normally bite us in the night. They feed on us. We have ticks. Ticks live on other animals' bodies. But by living on them, they also feed on them by sucking blood. Okay? So those ticks are parasites. Now, it is an animal depending on another animal. Why? it is getting food from it. Okay? So that is another way of how animals depend on other animals. Okay? Let's look at now transport, especially human beings. We use horses, we use donkeys to travel maybe from one place to another. Then doing work also. These animals do work. We take them in the garden, like the oxen. We take them in the garden. They plow. They are doing work for us. So we are depending on them, because that work is done by an animal. Then carrying goods. You've seen in the desert people use camels, they use donkeys. Donkeys are different from horses. The donkeys are normally smaller, slightly smaller than horses. Horses are really big. We use them maybe for games. And also those people who rear animals, they can sit on them and they trek long distances. Okay? So that is for horses and maybe donkeys. Now, there is also security. We have dogs providing security, different types of dogs. You can leave the local dogs, like also have the exotic like German Shepherds and Bulldogs, whatever. So they can help you. To provide security. You may not need a security guard because a security guard can be compromised. But it may be hard for you to compromise a dog, especially if it is well trained. You may not come with your meat and give it and you want to pass. It will not allow you, it will not even take the meat, but it will come for your thigh and bite you. So basically, we provide security. You have seen this at border points or even at the airport. They are the ones which sniff, the sniffing dogs. They'll find out that you have drugs, you want to take the drugs. So the human beings may not be able to identify the drugs. And it is the dog which is coming to our rescue. Okay? Some have even been trained to find out whether there is a bomb here or there. They'll bring the dogs, sniffer dogs. Then those people who carry out crimes like murder, still you have seen dogs coming in. So dogs, animals like dogs, provide security to animals like us, the people. Okay? Let's look at how plants depend on other plants. How do plants depend on other plants? Some plants with weak stems climb other plants for support. Remember, plants with weak stems cannot stand on their own. Examples, you know about those which are creeping, like the pumpkins. Look at the watermelons. Look at the passion fruits. Okay, those ones need support. Okay. Then some plants also provide shelter to other plants, especially these ones which are small. These plants provide a canopy and protect them from direct sunlight. Okay. So those are some of the ways plants depend on other plants. Yes, we can also look at protection from direct raindrops. Remember, when it rains so much, when especially hailstorms, when they come, they can always destroy crops. Now, in so doing, the canopy is like an umbrella structure, which these big trees put up and protect the trees underneath or the crops underneath, and therefore they protect them from such harsh weather. We can look at also improving soil fertility. We have plants like legumes. Remember, legumes have root nodules, and root nodules have bacteria in them. The bacteria are called nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Such bacteria help to trap nitrogen from the air or from the atmosphere, convert it into nitrates, and add it in soil. Okay? By so doing, they are improving soil fertility. Remember, there is a question they always ask you about the legumes. Which gas is used by legumes to make proteins? Of course, the answer is always nitrogen. So nitrogen is trapped from the atmosphere by the bacteria called the nitrifying bacteria or nitrogen-fixing bacteria. They help to trap nitrogen from the atmosphere, convert it into nitrates, and add in soil. So plants enjoy it. Okay? So those are some of the ways. Now, we have plants called heterotrophs. Plants which grow on other plants. They are like parasites. They grow on other plants. So that is another way of how a plant depends on another plant. I think you have ever seen such plants which are cabbage-like. They look like cabbage. They might grow on trees. Okay? So they are getting nutrients from a tree. You get it? And they keep growing. So they are depending, they are like parasites. Okay? So those plants are depending on other plants. Let's look at this last one, the interdependence of living things on non-living things. How do living things depend on non-living things? For example, do you need a non-living thing? Yes. Humans need non-living things like air, because we breathe in air, and that is oxygen, normally for respiration. I told you where food is burnt with oxygen to release energy, carbon dioxide and water vapor. The energy you use to do work, the energy you use to do things is all about respiration. And respiration cannot be possible if we don't have oxygen. So oxygen helps in respiration. Okay? Now that is how we can depend on non-living things. Another way plants can depend, animals can depend on non-living things. Especially manure is a non-living thing. Okay? Plants depend on the manure, which is a non-living thing. Then there are some animals which use soil as their habitat. Okay? Like termites, where do they live? There are some animals like squirrels. Where do they live? They burrow into the soil and they live in there. It is shelter. It is giving them shelter. So, apart from termites, we have organisms like squirrels. We have organisms like those small rodents, rats. They stay in the soil. Now, we have also earthworms. Earthworms depend on soil because it's where they live. But again, also soil depends on the living things. Like now, the earthworms. The earthworms depend on soil. And in turn, soil also gains from earthworms. How? It aerates it. By digging burrows in there, by digging holes, air enters through those holes, which have been made by earthworms. And in so doing, soil is benefiting. Okay? Now, we go back to termites, which are living things. Remember, they make ant hills, and ant hills are made from soil. We also depend on soil because we use soil to make bricks. The bricks are used for building. Okay? We also use soil to make glass. Soil like clay soil is used to make glass. Okay? So we are depending on soil. So basically, there are many other ways in which living things, okay, depend on non-living things. Plants purify air. The air we breathe in is purified by plants. Remember, they control global warming. How do they do that? How do they control the global warming? They keep capturing the carbon dioxide which accumulates in the air, okay, and use it for making food. Now, by so doing, they are purifying the air we breathe in. And therefore, it is important. Then water. How do we depend on water? Water quenches thirst. When you're so thirsty, you take water. And it's a non-living thing. It is helping you. Water also helps to dissolve food. Food that living things take. Even plants. The water helps to dissolve the mineral salts. Mineral salts are not taken in that quantity, conch state. It is dissolved first of all. So we say dissolved mineral salts. Plants take in dissolved mineral salts. Who does that? It is water. Now, water is also a habitat for some organisms. Do you remember we have organisms which live in the sea? Okay? So those ones are depending on water as their shelter, their habitat. The fish you eat, you get it from water. And it is water acting as a habitat. Water has many uses. We use it for cooking, we use it for building, we use it for feeding. It is part of food, it is a food. Okay? All right. Now, lastly is the manure that animals produce. It is used by plants. Plants use it maybe during their growth because it has a lot of nutrients. Okay? Now, how do we care for plants? Because now we looked at caring for plants. I told you we use thinning. We can do thinning, we can do pruning, we can do weeding, the removal of the unwanted plants from the garden. We are caring for plants. Then, pruning is when you reduce those branches, you keep reducing them using a sketcher or the secateur. Okay? Then, you can also carry out mulching the garden, that is using plant material to cover the topsoil. How do you cover it? That one is done during farming. Okay? You go on covering in the rows and columns, and so doing. Water will not carry or will not wash or will not remove the top fertile soil. That is another way of caring for crops. Then you can also practice crop rotation. Okay? Crop rotation helps to improve soil fertility. It also controls pests. By so doing, you are caring for these crops. Okay? Then transplanting them. That one is done on seedlings, those which are very young, and they are getting used to harsh weather. Taking them to the main garden from the nursery bed. That process is what we call transplanting of seedlings. All right, I would wish to stop here for today's session, and I wish you all the best for now. I'm your host, Teacher Isa. Please stay safe to avoid COVID-19. Okay? Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to get all the videos that we keep uploading. I wish you all the best for now. Till we meet again. Goodbye.